Okay, so I don't know if anyone here is... Okay, this is like a really suggestive looking angle. Let's start with this. So, I don't know if anyone plays VR, but... And I say that because the popularity of VR is like microscopic in terms of the gaming industry. But BONELAB was supposed to be a big release that came out, I think, earlier this year. Oh, been out for about a year. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Which is the next supposed to be the next iteration after BoneWorks. BONELAB was supposed to be more mod friendly, so the content could be made from the community rather than weekly, monthly patches or content drops from the developers. So their first game, BoneWorks, which let me pull that up so everyone knows what that looks like. BoneWorks was linear, has a story mode to it. Great physics. That's what it's known for, is the physics of BoneWorks. It's one of the like flagship VR titles. But look at that. How we can shove it. This is all done manually. No buttons. It's actually your fingers grabbing it.
Somebody broke into the complex and coordinated a breach in Myth. Myth OS is on lockdown.
You're heading to the tower to reset.
Isn't that sick?
I couldn't let you think you were the only one who saw it.
I bet those are the devs. I didn't get that far in BoneWorks. Because I'm taking the game slow. But yeah, it's a physics-based game. It really relies on the engine to make the gameplay. This game doesn't have a heavy modding scene though. But it's had a lot of content drops.
You've come all this way.
But it looks like Gary's mod if anyone's played that.
Like physical
But it's
world.
in VR. And it has a story. Not the strongest story, but it's still it's a story. Again, the gameplay is really yeah, you can see, you see how there's all this cool gameplay mechanics out there. Like, it's very creative, and the variety is insane. And they try not to limit what the player can do. So let's use that as a benchmark. And then their second release, which we'll go back to it now, being BONELAB, is just worse. I mean, they've added a couple things into it that were, you know, kind of trying to iterate on that genre, which can be really tough considering the amount of content that was in the original. But with BONELAB, I mean, things fell apart quickly. The modding scene didn't develop as fast as they wanted it to. Yeah, I'll show you what I mean.
And being one of the bigger BONELAB creators, BONELAB has been out for 1 year now, and in that time, a whole lot has happened. The modding scene exploded with an unfathomable amount of content. My channel skyrocketed from 2,000 to 300,000 subscribers.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype
and
behind
BONELAB
this.
itself got 2 patches. And
Exactly.
being one of the bigger BONELAB creators out there, I wanted to share my thoughts.
Good luck
on
making
everything.
content on that,
BONELAB's kind
bud.
of a strange game, from the lack of support and updates to the massive overhype everyone had before it dropped. There's a lot to cover here, so let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, you could definitely make a timeline
BONELAB
of
is a
this.
sequel to a game called BONEWorks.
Which
Now
we
at the
just took a
time,
look at,
BONEWorks
yep.
was a miracle for VR gaming back in 2019. Introducing players to fully physical, interactable environments that were a joy to explore and just mess around in. While for
Yep.
some, this level of physics-based
Sandbox.
gaming could be intense, once you got a feel for it, it was some of the best VR you could play. It was safe to say that the bar for VR experiences shot through the roof after BONEWorks. With a campaign that takes an average of 10 hours to complete, this game was meaty. There was a
10 hours? No. Let's see how many I have in... Let me I'm gonna open up mine real quick and show you guys. Bone Works. How many hours do I have? Okay, you know, I guess I was playing this in offline mode. It doesn't have them all. I had at least like 25 hours, and I think I'm in like the first section of the game. You can literally run around in that game, interact with everything to the extent where it affects the gameplay. Like, you can find different solution to things, you can kill the enemies in different types, because it relies heavily on the ragdoll physics. I think I don't remember what engine they use, but regardless, it's great. And it's, if you're a Gary's Mod fan, you love sandbox games, it's like that in first person. And after this video, I'm sure he'll show it, but I have pulled up the update history, and he talked about it. 2 patches. In the communication from the developers, they just dropped the ball and they never communicated with anyone. It's sad.
Meaty 10 hours to just chew through. And after it was done, I couldn't help but wish that there was even more meat. That's how tasty it was. So to hear that this game was getting a sequel, people went nuts, and rightfully so. April 20th, 2022, the first trailer for BONELAB released. You're shown new weapons, new enemies, and new areas that look very different from the environments in Boneworks, but keep that same techie MythOS aesthetic that players are familiar with, and that I personally am a huge fan of. I love
MythOS vibe. I call that,
all of this
like,
coming to both PC and Quest.
Developer.
It was starting to look like another Miracle VR experience. But the part of the trailer that got everyone really excited was this: official mod support. Boneworks did have a few mods, but with no official tools to build them, they were quite limited. Having BONELAB provide these tools and a place to share your creations with the community would give this game infinite potential. It was going to be VR's most important game yet.
Anytime you hear games talking about infinite potential, immediately do not buy the game, do not pre-order it, do not touch it within a freaking mile, because how many times have we heard that? Infinite potential? That's kind of like the terminology we used when we talked about early No Man's Sky, or even older than that. I think it was in 2008, Spore. If anyone's played that. The games that are sandboxes, man, they just... infinite potential. Oh boy.
Everyone was talking about it. With how groundbreaking Boneworks was, this game was sure to be just as amazing, if not even better. Another 5 months later and we'd get a second BONELAB trailer. This time we not only saw new weapons, enemies, and environments, but for the first time ever, new avatars. A whole part of the game, which I didn't even consider to be that in depth, was now one of the main...
You saw that mechanic with his arm. So a lot of the modders, the first mods that were coming out for this were the ability to import models. So people were... You know how gamers are. What do you think the first thing they're gonna pop up with? Oops. What do you think the first thing that they're gonna import? I don't know. Maybe some risque ones. Obviously. But yeah.
To BONELAB releases. I eagerly went live to my 3 viewers.
Where was I? Here?
Make it way more obvious where to go. After this, I made my way through Long Run, and I was really starting to feel how linear this game was. I figured that because BONELAB was designed to run on Quest, they had to take a very different approach to level design. In Boneworks, those limitations didn't exist, allowing for more open areas and generally just more stuff. I got to this part with the train thing and again got stuck for another embarrassing 10 minutes. I was so convinced that this train played a part in the puzzle I had to solve here. Turns out you just hit this button to activate a jump pad and
it was almost like a different set of developers made this game. Like the levels that he's showing here, like the layout of these things. Okay, cool. It's new environments, and the way they filmed the trailer was cool because it was like, hey, look, here's a lava scene. You're navigating over the floor is lava. Don't fall in it. But in reality, the layout of the level is either one, it's confusing, not in a good way, not like a maze that can be solved, but in a way of, oh yeah, the button, other side of the room in the corner behind the garbage can. Oh, you didn't find it? Whose fault is that? Or like, the solution isn't intuitive. It's not like, oh, look at the big shiny lever like you see in there. It's like sometimes you do something and you would just be dead in that room. And you can't advance. You don't understand what's going on. It's
convinced that this train played a part in the puzzle I had to solve here. Turns out you just hit this button to activate a jump pad and you move on. At the time, this was pretty demoralizing for me. At the end of this section, I actually ended up turning off the stream because I didn't feel like I was being entertaining enough, since I just kept getting stuck in different parts.
It's boring to play, boring to watch.
Natalie was there for me though. Could we get a thank you, Natalie, in the comments? That'd be great. Mind Dive was pretty fun. It got me used to sitting in a vehicle, which was a new feature, but then came the meat. Big Anomaly had me fight through corridors of Omni projectors and corrupted null bodies, and finally, Jimmy Wong himself sent me on a quest to complete the Omnitrix and report back. It was starting to get tasty. The next few levels were short, but
I like how Shotgun got stuck in the elevator.
Getting a feel for each avatar.
I heard that moon level was a big pain in the ass.
Unlocking a third eye. I was looking at my surroundings completely differently. I got back to Jimmy and he sent me on my way. With this new power he bestowed upon me, I was ready to take on the world. Launching directly into Ascent, I moved the balls, I smashed the skeletons, dodged the train, scaled the pillars, utilizing every avatar I learned for their specific talents. I took the elevator to home, fought through the cultists and the peasants, and it was
and I believe the game is like 4 hours.
It was done. That is the whole game.
It's like 3 or 4 hours, the entire game. And that's if you're like taking your time.
I can't lie. My initial experience with BONELAB was quite positive. I had a pretty good time going through the campaign, and it definitely felt like a proper sequel to Boneworks, but it also felt abrupt. Unlocking all the avatars felt like more of a halfway point rather than a couple levels away from the end of the game. I wanted to take advantage of this Ben 10 avatar switching power some more. I wanted to do some more. VR games are an entirely new medium, which makes them really hard to get right. Through corridors of Omni projectors and back to Jimmy, and he sent me on my way. But it also felt abrupt. Unlocking all the avatars felt like more of a halfway point rather than a couple levels away from the end of the game. I wanted to take advantage of this Ben 10 avatar switching power some more. I wanted to do some more physics
and that's
stuff
where you had to use mods
to
add more characters in it, because I think the game only has like 4 or 5 models. So if you want to get more creative, it's almost mandatory to start modding the game once you finish it. Otherwise, you'll get bored. There is a sandbox mode, and I think that's what he's doing here, that you can go into to try to add more time into the game. But, I mean, a game that relies on modding, that's not a good idea. It should be an addition to it. You gotta have a solid game, and then you can add mods to it. Skyrim, for instance.
Criminal that the moon section of this game, with all that fun low gravity goodness, only really lasts about a minute, and your only objective is to go from point A to point B. The community was surprised by this relatively short campaign, and initially a lot of them were quite disappointed with the game as a whole. A game that costs more than Boneworks had about half as much playtime on
That's what I was talking about in terms 4 hours. What'd I say, boys? 4 hours. 8 hours for $30. And it's not even just 8 hours. I mean, if you want to investigate all the physics and aspects of this game, if you didn't buy Boneworks and you just bought BONELAB, maybe you could stretch this out by being more interested in all that. But if you definitely played Boneworks and you're trying to transition into BONELABs, this number is going to shrink.
Most people. Then once they did reach the end, there wasn't a whole lot. A few arcade minigames, a few leaderboards you could climb, a few sandbox maps. I can see why in the beginning people might have felt upset. But there was one thing that we had yet to experience. One thing that was going to change everything
Limited
about
experience
BONELAB in a matter of days.
Can't rely on people to make the content.
Yo, that's nuts! Why is his face so long? Oh, you're kidding me. This is intense. That is the first modded gun in BONELAB. Try to rocket ride it? Wait, that's actually a goated idea. One sec.
Okay, I know he's showing a compilation of all these mods that he put in, but let's think about it this way. How is what Boneworks is doing unique in this space? Well, it's a sandbox in VR. And people can make content and people are uploading it to the game. And we'll look at the website after this because I think it's kind of interesting to see the mods that have come out of it. Some of them are quite large. They have a level, player model, unique assets and such. But overall, it's just little trinkets, majority of it.
Well, there's only one thing to do.
You'll see that.
And science!
I have no idea what the recoil on this is going to be, but let's try it out. I gotta be on some type of FBI watch list after this.
How crazy is the explosion if I use
You know what would
two at
make this
once?
even better?
Where'd the thing go? Why is there a
Copy
chair
Gary's
here?
mod and put in game
Dude,
modes. and
BONELAB
multiplayer.
Fusion's crazy.
Yo.
Mods were here, and it was a huge
Oh, yeah, I think there's a
deal.
multiplayer
It started
mod.
with avatars and levels, then eventually guns and vehicles, more advanced avatars, code
There needs to
mods,
be a
nitrogen
server
goggles,
browser,
the
though.
mystery box, multiplayer, the fucking
Unless they've
portal
added that
gun,
too,
and
but
the
I
views.
doubt.
Oh my god, the views. I owe my entire platform here on YouTube to the BONELAB modding community for the jump start it gave me. I'd argue that the modding scene is what gives this game most of its value. If you look up anything to do with
It's only
BONELAB today,
value.
mods are pretty much the only thing you'll see. They
Yep.
quickly evolved the game from what was widely considered an overhyped
What was
letdown
that
into
AEO
the
thing?
garage
Did you
mod
guys
of
see
VR.
that? I'm
And
not
so
gonna
with this
back it up.
explosion of content, the game was in a pretty good place,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Well, it's not that simple.
Nope.
From the launch of BONELAB to now, there have been many issues that both players and modders have faced, and they all seem to stem from one problem: the deafening silence from Stress Level 0. Now, I'm sure we're all well aware.
I know he's gonna show this, but I'll show you guys how quiet they've been. This is the BONELAB Steam page. Tell me if you don't see something. We got the game trailer, description, you can buy the game, and then there's about the game. Oh yeah, you can scroll down, there's reviews. There's no news section. You know what they put in the news? Updates. You know what this doesn't have? Updates. Why don't we take a look at their Twitter? Stress Level 0. They're the creators here. When is the last time they've posted something? May 26th. What was it? Merch. What about before that? Merch. What about before that? New updates. I'm looking forward to making the first of the year. So this is a retweet. Is this even from? I think this is the developer. May 1st. Man, they've been quiet. Okay, still not about an update about winning an award. Okay. There's a cup. All right, another reward. Artwork. Okay, another cup. Posters. Okay. I think we get the point. And look, that one was all the way back from 2022.
The two
Jeez.
patches that BONELAB received after
This
the
is
2
pathetic.
years of promised updates and support, but behind the scenes, it was just as bad. I got on a call with a few modders from the community and asked them what is the main problem with making mods for BONELAB, and this is what they had to say.
I would say in the long term, it was definitely the lack of documentation, because a lot of us relied on asking others in the community, which is what helped a lot.
The toughest thing was just understanding all the different kinds of scripts. The actual SDK that we got was super
Yeah.
limited. None of the mods that you see today would be possible if we hadn't taken a look at the game and used dummy scripts in order to fill things in.
We didn't have any SDK at all in Boneworks. In BONELAB, at least we were given something, but it's been a year. I feel like there should definitely be more updates than fixing a couple bugs. They've pushed out about 3 patches, and they've
You
all
guys
been
just
bug
move on to
fixes or
another-
minor
another
changes.
game.
They haven't really handled communication with the community very well.
I guess SLZ not
Handled
being
it, they
too
don't even communicate.
communicative as much after the first few months. It was like Melon talking
Exactly.
a few times, other SLZ devs speaking, and then it just went flat out silent. And we just heard nothing. It was radio silence, and we all had to rely on each other. Hence why we made the extended SDK.
The extended SDK is a collection of ripped scripts directly
They had
from
to do
the
it
game. It
themselves.
allows
That's
people
so
to
sad.
use, more complex sort of things, because in the official SDK, there's no way to do stuff like guns or cars or anything that's not an avatar, like a simple object that falls and stuff. It's been so long since they've given an update. I don't necessarily, like the radio silence, but in a way I kind of get it. They don't want to promise and then underdeliver.
They could do better about
No.
explaining their goals
Don't make
and giving a
excuses
better
for them.
roadmap of what they're planning to do.
I can fully understand the idea of not wanting to make a promise and then it just kind of falling through or setting up expectations, but it has
Yeah.
been a little too quiet. I know
Yep.
there's been whispers all behind the scenes of things that are going on, but those are just whispers. It would be nice to see something a little tangible. Right now, it just feels like the game isn't going anywhere.
The general consensus is that there was a point in time where SLG just stopped communicating. It was around the same time they put out the most recent update to the game, which is back in November 2022. I'm not entirely sure what happened.
I didn't realize it was that long
The Steam page
ago.
went silent, the Twitter went silent, the YouTube went silent. The only news I could find was a couple tweets from Brandon telling us that they're focusing entirely on developing the Marrow engine. This silence from the studio is concerning. A lot of people feel
They're
abandoned.
running into
Like, we've been
development
given this
problems.
amazing
That
platform for
sucks.
creation, but left to fend for ourselves after being
They don't wanna
promised
say
support and
anything about it.
guidance. I was originally going to be diving headfirst into BONELAB modding, importing my VTube avatar and some basic models from Call of Duty Zombies, just to dip my toes into the process. Once the official SDK got updated, I was planning to take the time to learn how to expand on these mods I was making, but that update never came. And also the
I know
YouTube
that
thing worked
feeling.
out, so even if there was an update, I probably wouldn't have time for it. So I just pay other people to make mods
This
for
isn't the
me.
first game to do this. Yeah.
So here we
Just
are,
pay someone to do
1
it.
year later.
Like me.
Do I hate BONELAB and never want to play it again? Do I think it was a cash grab? Do I think Meta ruined what this game
No,
could
they
have been
didn't
for us
intend
all?
it to happen. It's just
No.
that's what happens
Despite
in
the game's
development.
design flaws and the lack of communication and updates, BONELAB is and always has been an extremely fun game to play.
BONELAB on a technical level is very impressive. The physics rig is great. The interactions are great. They're the best interaction system in VR, just period. Just on a surface level, the actual, where the game is, base game content, it's not all there, but you can still have a lot of fun.
I think the idea of a VR sandbox is always a very cool concept, especially BONELAB did it very, very well. It's a great, Marrow is a great engine. I like Marrow.
I think someone could do it better.
It's nice.
Considering my hype for it for a very long time,
hope
even since
someone does.
Boneworks, when it was like known as Project 4, I've been amazingly hyped for that game. And when it came out, it honestly exceeded my expectations. I was very happy with how it turned out. Even without the modding scene, I was ecstatic with how it turned out. It felt like a complete success. It's a Boneworks. I feel like SLZ did an amazing job. I'm very appreciative of what they've gave us, and I'm very happy with the product that we got. So I would say BONELAB is a great game the way it is.
To me, the magic
It's
of
a good
BONEWORKS
game.
was all the little interactions combining into one
It's a good
overwhelmingly
game.
fun experience. I could go to a locker, open it, pick up an axe, kill someone with that axe, stuff their body into the locker, and shut it again. That is cool. Or I just need to see a therapist. But that magic is still there in BONELAB, only this time with different avatars, endless mods, and most importantly, it's on Quest. Bringing that magic to a much wider audience on relatively limited hardware is a wild accomplishment that we can't overlook. The modding scene, while still in the dark about a lot of things, is doing fine thanks to its strong and passionate community building things like the extended SDK. And I'm still going to be playing and making content about the game. I actually
don't know
have
about
another
that,
2
man.
BONELAB videos I'm
Strong?
working on right now, actually.
Nah.
But what do I think about the state of the
I
game
don't think
right
it's gonna be
now?
strong for
Technically,
much
they haven't
longer.
broken their promise of continued updates, albeit with the significant hiatus we're in right now. And
If
in
you
my
come back
opinion,
to
what
this
they're
game in
focusing on
6
right now
months,
is
I
exactly
guarantee
what
you
Brandon
will
said.
have the amount of
Working on
people
the
that are working
Marrow.
on this.
Hey, so this video is supposed to come out on the 29th of September to line up with BONELAB's anniversary, but just in case they gave us some kind of update, I held off for a little bit. I waited patiently throughout the whole day, and once midnight hit, nothing. So I continued to finish off the video, and at 1 a.m. the next
Damn,
day,
they didn't even say
we
anything
get
on their
this.
anniversary.
It was kind of my fault for not taking time zones into account, but after 10 long months, the radio silence was finally broken. Brandon posted this update to the BONELAB Steam page, and to summarize it, he goes into what Stress Level 0 have been up to these past months.
Let's take a look. Been focusing on the development, prioritizing it over PR. That's fine, but you gotta still update your community. Can't go silent, bro. Blah, 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 blah. No one cares. Uh-huh. Okay. The update is very different from what most people would expect, but we thought and think it's best for the long term. This is the next one. Okay, that was vague.
They've been focusing pretty
Marrow SDK will receive level authoring focused features. Okay, so they're working on the engine-based modding tools. Focuses on the core tech, optimization, polish, Marrow SDK, and few exceptions, rather than rapid future releases. VR needs to be more stable. VR needs a more stable physical foundation and long-term growth. That sounds like they're having problems. This is marketing speak for problems. The content team has been rebuilding existing content Okay, so they're redoing everything and putting a new engine? Or updating their engine? Wait, what? Our goal, while it won't be fully realized for many years... How long do they think people are going to stick around? In mini games. What, they're just going to keep... Boneworks, Bone Labs, Bone Boning, Bone Marrow, Bone SDK Mark II, Bone Lab version 3. New systems as they come online. Okay, well... SDK is the same externally and internally. Okay, well... Tons of work has gone into long-term goal of unifying the player and the humanoid NPCs. Still years from completion. Worth pursuing. Okay, the players will now use a full body animation as input. It's more physically complex than ever. And they're optimizing. Does any... Bro. From what I've read so far... What is this last bullet? This is... We're working on the engine. We have no progress to show, and it's going to take years. But the future of VR is bright. Okay.
Pretty much entirely on the Mario SDK, so much so that it's taken priority over everything, including communications with the community. They're really trying to refine the feel of experiences that use Mario.
Gosh.
This update is very good and lines up pretty closely with what I have to say in the last part of this video, so you should definitely watch to the end. Please watch to the end, thank you. I think they're going to release this as its own separate package.
I mean,
so that developers can make VR experiences
links censored,
that reach
but
the bar that
maybe I
BONELAB
can.
and BONEWORKS have set, providing the blood to the heart of these experiences, if you will. VR games are an entirely new medium, which makes them really hard to get right. The platform that Mario provides is as close to an industry standard as I can think of.
What's it on? Is it on YouTube?
So to get it right, they're going to need a lot of time, on top of the many years it's taken them to get to this point. I can see the vision. Most of my favorite moments in VR took place in BONEWORKS and BONELAB. So if the release of Mario allows us to get more magic like that, I'm all for it. And I'm fine with waiting as long as it will take.
Nah, bro, this game... That is so copium. BONEWORKS and BONELAB. Anyone who's looking into a physics-based game, just buy BONEWORKS. BONELAB is just... It's dead. It's just dead. You can't just purchase based off of promises. You gotta show your consumer base what you're making. Well, this is the BONELAB's modding scene. This is the website they use. They don't even have an internal search engine from what I'm aware of. A lot of mods, games rather, use mod.io for their modding. And this is what BONEWORKS is, or BONELABs at this point. It's just mods. The single player, like I said, is only 4 hours, and then you move into this, and this is all you got. Which, if you're looking at these are pretty cool. I mean, this is basically Gary's mod at this point. You just upload, download these mods, and play the game. It's pretty cool. But longevity? If I think the BONEWORKS team, BONELABS team takes too long, something else might enter the space and steal the floor underneath them in terms of the sandbox environment, and then what are they going to do? Hopefully that engine turns out into something, because otherwise, guess what? That company won't be existing for much longer. They just need to work on their PR speak. I think that's a takeaway they need to look at more. But anyway, that's BONELABS. If anyone's interested in VR, I actually have a VR headset. Some games are good. Problem is, a lot of them kind of need updates. They're not the best in the world. A lot of them look like demos. That whole thing that people were talking about a while ago, with like VR being demo based, right? And there weren't a lot of complete products with stories and RPGs. That's kind of still the case. There's not a whole lot of software out there, but there are some gems out there. You just got to look for them a little bit harder. this is a really good video. And I think if you like this type of stuff, maybe look more into Bombeo's content. I'm going to definitely subscribe and like it and keep track and see if there's anything else that comes out and piques my interest. But, I mean, without this video, I wouldn't even remembered about BONELABs. It kind of died, guys, to be honest. Without it, I probably would have just left it in my library and just hoped something would have updated, or maybe an engine update like Bombeo has talked about. But yeah, I hope the company turns it around and starts pushing updates and gets more communication out there.